The city was still half asleep when Charlotte sat on the frozen pavement, her tiny hands cupped around a paper cup that held nothing but the memory of yesterday's kindness. Her thin body trembled beneath an oversized gray sweater she had found in a dumpster weeks ago. Each breath she took rose in small white clouds, dissolving into the cruel winter air. Behind her, the glass towers of wealth shimmered under the rising sun. A world that never turned its eyes toward children like her. Every passing car felt like a reminder of how invisible she had become. People walked by talking on phones, sipping hot coffee, complaining about small inconveniences, never seeing the little girl with cracked lips and hollow eyes. That morning, fate rolled quietly down the street in the form of a sleek black limousine. Inside sat Alex Hill, the woman whose name had become synonymous with power. At 40, she was known as one of the most influential billionaires in the city, owner of multiple corporations, philanthropist and symbol of success. But behind her calm, confident gaze was a soul that still remembered what hunger felt like. She had once been a girl without a home, standing at the edge of despair. As her car slowed near the intersection, Alex's eyes caught something unusual, a small figure sitting alone beside a bakery door. The girl wasn't asking for money. She wasn't begging. She was simply staring at the window display, at a loaf of bread she couldn't afford. In that single moment, something deep inside Alex stirred, a memory, a reflection, perhaps a silent echo of her own forgotten childhood. The driver asked if they should keep moving, but Alex didn't answer. Instead, she slowly stepped out of the car, her heels clicking softly against the wet pavement. The cold wind brushed her tailored coat as she approached the trembling child. For the first time in hours, Charlotte looked up, expecting rejection, pity, or just another pair of eyes that would turn away. But what she saw was different. There was warmth in that woman's gaze, strength and softness, both existing in perfect balance. Alex knelt beside her, lowering herself from the world of power to the world of pain, and without a word, she offered her hand. It wasn't money. It wasn't food. It was something Charlotte hadn't been given in a very long time, hope. That day, as the limousine drove away from the cold pavement, the world outside remained the same. But inside that car, a new story began. One written not with ink, but with kindness. Charlotte pressed her tiny palms against the window glass, watching the city fade. She didn't know where she was going, who this woman was, or why she had chosen her. All she knew was that for the first time in years, someone had seen her, and that was enough to change everything. The limousine glided through the golden gates of Hill Estate, a world far removed from anything Charlotte had ever imagined. Wide marble steps led to a mansion that seemed to touch the sky, its windows glimmering like silent eyes watching her every move. Inside, everything smelled of roses, fresh linen, and wealth. A scent that whispered, "You don't belong here." Charlotte's bare feet hesitated on the polished floor as she stepped in. The quietness of the place frightened her. There were no shouting vendors, no barking dogs, no cars screeching through puddles. Just silence, heavy and perfect. For a child raised in chaos, silence felt like danger. Alex Hill watched her carefully from a distance. The fragile figure with tangled blonde hair, clutching her old gray sweater as if it were armor. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Alex had seen that look before. The look of a child who had learned to survive by expecting nothing. That evening, Charlotte sat on the edge of a soft bed that could have easily swallowed her whole. The sheets were clean, the room warm, the lights dim. Yet her heart raced, unsure how to exist in comfort. Every small sound, the ticking clock, the faint hum of the heater, made her flinch. In another part of the house, Alex stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Her reflection stared back, calm, confident, but lonely. She had built her empire with discipline and sacrifice, but the emptiness of her success had grown louder with every passing year. Adopting a child wasn't part of her plan. Yet something about Charlotte had broken through the armor she had built around her heart. Days turned into weeks. Charlotte rarely spoke, moving like a ghost through the mansion. She would sit quietly in corners, observing the staff, watching how everyone carried themselves, graceful, polished, perfect. She tried to mimic them, to disappear among them. But every night when Alex returned from her business meetings, she would find Charlotte sitting by the piano room, staring at the keys but never daring to touch them. One evening, Alex walked in quietly and sat beside her. Charlotte turned her face away, afraid she had done something wrong. But Alex didn't scold her. She simply placed her hand on the girl's shoulder, firm, reassuring. In that silence, something shifted. Charlotte began to trust her. The days that followed changed slowly but beautifully. Alex enrolled her in a private school, hired tutors, and introduced her to books filled with stories of courage and vision. For the first time, Charlotte learned what it meant to dream. She would sit by the large window in her study, reading stories of women who rose from dust to destiny. Each story lit a spark inside her, a small, glowing fire that whispered, "You can become more." And while Alex never spoke of her own past, Charlotte began to notice the scars behind her elegance, the quiet moments when Alex's eyes lingered too long on the city streets below, or when she paused before entering a boardroom meeting, gathering strength no one else could see. One rainy night, Charlotte walked into Alex's office. The billionaire sat surrounded by papers and glowing screens, her empire stretching across numbers and graphs. Charlotte hesitated, then whispered her first words in weeks, a trembling, innocent sentence that made Alex's chest tighten. "Can I learn to be like you?" Alex looked at her, at the little girl who once begged for bread, now standing with eyes full of possibility. And for the first time in years, Alex smiled, a real smile, one that reached her soul. From that moment on, Charlotte was no longer just a child under her care. She became a student, a reflection, a second chance. The mansion that once felt silent began to echo with the sound of growth. Soft piano notes, the turning of pages, laughter, and dreams being born in places where pain once lived. The transformation had begun. Years passed quietly inside the Hill mansion. The fragile little girl who once sat shivering on cold streets had grown into a graceful young woman, a calm, confident, and full of purpose. Under Alex Hill's care, Charlotte didn't just learn how to read or speak, she learned how to rise. Alex became more than a guardian. She became a mentor, teaching her lessons the world never offered freely. "Power means nothing," Alex often said, "if it cannot lift someone else." Charlotte absorbed every word. But success never comes without scars. At 17, when Alex introduced her to the corporate world, many people whispered behind her back, "The street girl is not one of us." Board members doubted her. Investors smiled politely but never truly saw her worth. And though Alex defended her fiercely, Charlotte began to feel the old fear returning, that quiet voice reminding her of where she came from. One night, sitting alone in her office, she looked out over the city lights, the same lights that once looked down on her when she was begging for bread. Tears filled her eyes. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I was never meant to belong here." But then she remembered the first day Alex had found her, that outstretched hand in the winter cold, that silent promise that she was worth saving. And in that moment, Charlotte realized belonging was never given. It was earned. The next morning, she walked into the meeting room where men twice her age were waiting. Her voice didn't shake this time. Her eyes carried the calm fire she had inherited from Alex. She presented ideas, numbers, visions, not from textbooks, but from life. She spoke of struggle, resilience, and rebuilding. Lessons that could never be bought with money. When she finished, the room fell silent, and for the first time, the same people who once doubted her stood up and clapped. From that day onward, Charlotte's name began to rise alongside Alex Hill's. Together, they turned their company into more than a business. It became a movement. They built homes for orphans, schools for the forgotten, and programs for those who had once been invisible. And years later, when Alex's hair began to turn silver, she handed Charlotte the company seal, her life's work. With trembling hands, Charlotte accepted it, not as a symbol of power, but as a continuation of love. As cameras flashed and reporters asked questions, she smiled softly and said, "I was once a little girl no one wanted to see, but someone did, and that changed everything. If you ever doubt your worth, remember, sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to turn a beggar into a believer." and a believer into a leader. The hall erupted in applause. Alex, standing at the back, wiped a tear from her cheek, proud, fulfilled, at peace. Charlotte Hill, the little street beggar, had become the youngest CEO in the company's history, not because of wealth, not because of luck, but because one woman had chosen to see light in the dark. And so the story that began on a cold street ended under golden lights. A reminder that sometimes the smallest act of compassion can rewrite an entire life.